Indeed. Vanessa, let's come to you then. And well, we're moving to Israel, but perhaps not a topic that, or an aspect of the Israeli conflict that people will be expecting.
Yeah, it's very much an aspect of Israeli society. This was a report that was published only a few days ago, actually in Hebrew media in Israel Hayom. I've effectively paraphrased it and reviewed it at my Substack so people can read further details. There, girls raped in ritual ceremonies revealed the horrors. Investigative report by Israel Hayom. I'll just take one of the testimonies that was contained within the report. This is from someone, all of the testimonials were given a pseudonym to obviously protect their identity. They're mostly talking about religious, ritual, ceremonial mass rape of children. And she says it's always a dark place. There are between 6 and 9 men there. They tie me to a bed, stand in a circle, mumble prayers or blessings, and there is a rabbi who always leads the ceremony. There's a ceremony, and every one of them rapes me. So this is considered to be very prevalent in the ultra-Orthodox Jewish circles. Back in 2013, New York Rabbi Rosenberg also talked about child rape assembly line, so it's not something new. And also recently, in the last few days, there has been a video put out by Shoshana Strouk, if I can just have the tweet up, thank you, who's the daughter of the Israeli settlements minister, Orit Strouk, who you can see in the photograph there, who in the video is talking about taking out legal proceedings against her family, including her brother, who, when she was a child, raped her repeatedly, filmed it, and then circulated the video. So as I said, this is not something new in Israel, and all of the reports that I'm basing my accounts upon are Israeli reports. And so this is taken from 2012. This was also relating to the Haredi community, the ultra-Orthodox community in Israel itself. Talking about a paedophile ring within that community. He masterminded systematic rape of over 100 kids. The Nalawat community reels from the largest paedophile abuse case in the nation's history. At least 3 of the 10 suspects remain free. And it's also worth mentioning that 80% of the cases that are brought to the attention of the police and the legal system in Israel are not finally prosecuted. 60% of those that are consist of abuse by female and male against children under the age of 13. This was a report more recently, I think it's 2022, in Jerusalem Post. Tens of thousands of pedophiles operate in Israel every year. There are multiple reports. If you put in a Google search, you will find many more. I've just taken some of the most high profile to demonstrate what I'm talking about. And if we look at the legal failures, this is from an NGO, Humanium, who put out an article, October 2024, failures in Israel's legal system, particularly around pedophilia. Offenders exploit Israel's law of return to evade consequences in other countries. And this is where the abuse of Israel's law of return, which basically affords citizenship to anyone who either converts to Judaism or is already Jewish, they can immediately be given refuge in Israel, regardless of whether they have pedophile or child abuse or rape allegations facing them where they are, including high-profile Hollywood filmmakers. And then, of course, we have to relate this to what's going on by the Zionist forces against Palestinians in custody. This is a report, again, another recent one by the OCHR. Israel's escalating use of torture against Palestinians in custody, a preventable crime against humanity. UN experts, and let's have a look at one section of that report. Countless testimonies by men and women speak of detainees in cage-like enclosures tied to beds, blindfolded and in diapers, stripped naked, deprived of adequate healthcare, food, water, and sleep, electrocutions, including on their genitals, blackmail, and cigarette burns. In addition, victims spoke of loud music played until their ears bled, attacks by dogs, waterboarding, suspension from ceilings, and severe sexual and gender-based violence. And that includes mass rape of children. There is, again, extensive witness testimony of that. Also by female guards in the Zionist prisons. And of course, we have the very recent case of the sodomization of Palestinian prisoners at State Eiman, one of the most notorious prisons in Israel. But coming again to a more recent case, this is an Israeli CEO of a cybersecurity company, Itai Levy, who has been arrested for sexually assaulting at least 5 children under the age of 4. Now, again, this hasn't been reported, of course, in mainstream media. It's been picked up by Middle Eastern media, some Turkish media, and also on social media. So this is by suppressed news. Israeli cyber CEO arrested for sexual abuse of 5 children under the age of 4. Itai Levy, he's the CEO of the cyber firm Cornelius. This is actually spelt wrong in the tweet. And he's an Israeli resident. The investigation began after a child under the age of 4 signaled to his parents that he had been harmed. And following a forensic interview, police searched Levy's electronic devices and uncovered hundreds of disturbing files, including child pornography and images of abuse. Authorities suspect at least 5 victims, all under the age of 4. The investigation is ongoing. And I just want to have a look, because we've been talking about the Zionist infiltration into all sectors of society in the West, but particularly in the UK and the US and the EU. So what is Cornelius, the company that Itai Levy founded, and he was formerly the CEO. His name has now been removed from the website. It is a cybersecurity outfit that was founded back in 2014. It doesn't yet, to my knowledge, have operations in the UK, but it does have operations in the US, in California, and in New York, in Moldova, and Poland. I then went to Itai Levy's LinkedIn profile, and there it quite clearly says he was the co-founder and he is the CEO of Cornelius. And if we have a look at his actual resume on LinkedIn, this is where it becomes quite extraordinary. So he's not some low-profile cybersecurity founder. He worked extensively with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, providing, again, cyber and information security, and he was a network engineer. He worked as a representative in Toronto, Canada, and, of course, he served with the Israeli Defense Forces. So, again, you know, what is happening here is what we're seeing is something that is now coming to the surface, but in my opinion has been prevalent in Israeli society for decades, if not longer, and not only in Israeli society. It has been picked up in America and even in the UK back in 2023. Yuval Keren, who was a high-profile rabbi with one of the progressive synagogues, Southgate Progressive, was picked up and received a suspended sentence for having 1,694 indecent images of children on his electronic devices. 189 were category A, which means extreme child abuse. Again, very influential person in the Zionist movement in the UK. And also we shouldn't forget Labour peer and MP Greville Jenner, who faced allegations of 33 cases of child abuse, was investigated under the Independent Child Abuse Investigation. And those were children, of course, under his care in the care homes in Leicestershire. He was, again, a very high-profile figure in the Zionist movement in the UK who died before he could be successfully prosecuted. He also apparently developed dementia, which prevented him being fully prosecuted for the crimes he was accused of. So I think what I'm trying to say here is when we're looking at the infiltration of all sectors across UK society, whether it's health, surveillance, cyber, education, are we also not only absorbing members of, for example, Unit 8200, but are we also absorbing very questionable individuals who potentially have crimes in their background of child abuse, rape, sexual harassment, which is something that largely goes unpunished in Israel, which is known and is recognized as a haven for pedophiles.
Any thoughts?
Well, I mean, shock mostly. I mean, no, it's very well articulated, Vanessa, but extremely disturbing. And you know, as we see there, we see here exactly the same. I mean, like you described, with the judiciary just turning as much of a blind eye as they possibly can, and particularly with the sentencing. I mean, you know, what you describe, most obvious recent example, I suppose, is Hugh Edwards, but absolutely not dealing with it. I mean, perpetuating it.
Yeah, 100%. And it is something which is right at the core of many societies, not just in Israel, but in the UK as well, Vanessa. So this is something that we have to face and recognize and deal with. But we'll talk about that much more in extra, I'm quite sure. Vanessa, let's come back to you then. And what's the latest in Syria?
Well, one of the latest stories in Syria, of course, the whole situation's incredibly complex, and I think you and I will be talking about that very soon on another podcast. But this is about the fact that, of course, we've always reported at UK Column, and I have consistently reported that Israel since 2011 has been supportive of the various armed groups, including Al-Qaeda and ISIS, in Syria to overthrow the former Syrian government and leadership. And here we have further proof of that. Just prior to the attack on Aleppo, the Jolani forces were talking about normalization with Israel as one of the conditions that they be allowed to advance as quickly as they did. Very recently, Jolani meets with Israeli puppet Mahmoud Abbas, who is the leader of the Palestinian state in the occupied territories, but is also responsible for many of the reprisals against the actual Palestinian resistance in the occupied territories. But interestingly, very recently, I think in the last 2 days, there were 2 US Congress members who paid what is being termed as an unofficial visit to Syria as the US mulls sanctions relief, sanctions, of course, that were imposed as a collective punishment on all the Syrian people, while being described as targeting only the Syrian leadership. So 2 US lawmakers, Marlin Stutzman, Republican congressman from Indiana, and Corey Mills from Florida, also Republican, came to Syria and met with Jolani. You, of course, may well know him better as Ahmed al-Shara. That's his rebranding to try and avoid the labeling of him as leader and founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria, and, of course, for the terrorist crimes that he committed and is continuing to commit against the Syrian people. So let's have a listen to what Corey Mills said in an interview with Arabic media. I think it was actually during his visit to Damascus. Let's have a listen.
Well, having shared a border with one another, it's important for Syria and Israel to have strong relationships. I think that the president and the leadership has demonstrated their willingness to work with Israel as they looked at preventing Hashd al-Shaabi from transitioning weapons out of Iraq through Syria and into Lebanon. I think that, you know, the president has been very clear that he looks to establish and maintain a strong relationship, that he wants to be a good neighbor. And so I think that this is very re-encouraging for the American people and for the American president, who put in place the historic and monumental Abraham Accords. And so I think that looking forward at a strong Israel and Syrian relationship, looking forward with a strong Iraq-Syrian relationship, as well as for that in the West, is really key. But the message that I heard from the foreign affairs minister, as well as for the president, is that they look forward to developing and building strong allies. They look forward to trying to partner with the West, and that they're not going to allow this to be a safe haven of terrorism for the Iranian regime or a proxy state.
But of course, it is a haven for Al-Qaeda that is continuing to commit genocide against Syrian minorities, not only the minorities, even the Sunni Muslim communities that is the majority in Syria is coming under attack now, particularly if they protect the Syrian minorities. But what is interesting is that what it became very obvious, these are the conditions for lifting the sanctions on Syria. So they're the conditions that Jolani has to meet, which is effectively normalization with Israel under the Abraham Accords, which of course were put in place by Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, back during Trump's first administration. And what happened immediately after the visit of Corey Mills and Marlin Stutzman, Syrian security forces, meaning Al-Qaeda rebrands, detained Palestinian resistance leaders. They actually arrested leaders of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the Quds brigades. Now, previously, Jolani had also disarmed and dissolved all of the Palestinian armed forces in Syria, including the Liwa al-Quds, which were actually part of the Syrian Arab Army itself, and closed all the offices of the Palestinian resistance factions. He basically rescinded Palestinian citizenship and basically converted them back into being refugees, something that Syria was always against. He disclosed the positions of Palestinian leaders for targeting by Israel since December 2024, imprisoned resistance fighters. And of course, this is while Israel is conducting ongoing assassinations of resistance leaders in Lebanon, and Palestine. So effectively, it's becoming very clear that Jolani, if he wasn't before, is rapidly becoming a stooge for Israel in Syria.